All right, Nick, let's talk about the Nittany Lions coming into another tune-up game against UMass this weekend, potentially gearing up for a big-time showdown versus Ohio State. This could be huge for the Nittany Lions, but people are asking the question, is Penn State explosive enough on offense to compete with the top teams in the Big Ten, top teams in all of college football? And head coach James Franklin, he raised the question, does it matter? Do they need to be that explosive, or is a balanced approach all around the ball all they need to win games? We have a really interesting article diving into all of this. Let's read from it, and then we'll get and discuss it on the other side. This, of course, is from over at the Philadelphia Inquirer, a very good piece. Go check it out. It says Penn State is tied for dead last in the FBS this season with just 12 offensive plays of 20-plus yards. But head coach James Franklin didn't seem the least bit concerned as he talked at length Tuesday about his team's offensive balance this season. He said, a big reason the Nittany Lions have cruised to a 5-0 start. He said, I think in terms of being able to run and pass, we have as good of a balance as I think we've had, and maybe that I've been around, Franklin said. Are there some areas of balance that, we're probably still searching for? Yes, but I think our ability to run or pass the ball is problematic for opponents. I do believe that. And the season numbers to this point back up what Franklin is saying, Nick. Penn State has gained 60 first downs via the passing plays and 59 first downs via running plays. Pretty good balance, I would say there. It says in 403 offensive snaps, 172, roughly 42.7% have been passes, 231, roughly 57.3 have been running plays. And the offensive gained 1,178 total passing yards for an average of 235.6 per game and 974 rushing yards for an average of 194.8 per game. So the moral to this story, Nick, Penn State's offense has been very balanced. They've been able to pass just as easy as they've been able to run, and I agree with Coach Franklin's phrasing here, saying it is going to be problematic for opponents to face a team who can run the ball just as well as they can pass it. Explosive plays irregardless. I'm sure they do want a few more explosive plays, but it is not necessary, and they have proved it up until this point. Nick, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts on this before we get into that. Penn State fans, as I said, tune-up game potentially versus UMass. Can't sleepwalk through it, but we want to know, what are your predictions of the score for this weekend versus UMass? Let us know in the comment section below. But Nick, what are your thoughts on the Lions and all of Franklin's comments on the offense?
Yeah, so I think he brings up a great point because there's a few things to understand about how big plays generally happen. You can force them into the point where you eventually get big plays. Like if you just keep chucking the ball down the field, eventually, you may throw 3 interceptions and go 0 for the first 5, but eventually you'll start hitting some big ones, right? So you can force big plays. Number 2, defenses can be hyper aggressive and you can get big plays because the defense goes one-on-one with receivers. You just get mismatches and things like that. You usually see that a lot in SEC play just because defenses are just programmed to be so hyper aggressive, very blitz happy. In the Pac-12 and Big 12, it's more the offenses, right? They're more hyper explosive and hyper aggressive, I should say, in terms of constantly attacking down the field. I'm not worried at all about the so-called lack of big plays because they've been incredibly efficient. What difference does it make whether you go 8, 12, 13, 15, 16, 9, 3, 7, 2 touchdown, or if you go 3, 3, 50, 3, 3, 3, 3 touchdown? Like it's the same effect, same reality. In fact, I prefer you to be more efficient with a bunch of different ways to beat you. The greatest example in, I think, football history is the New England Patriots of the NFL in the Tom Brady era. They were one of the least explosive teams in football. Their best receiver was Julian Edelman, a 5'10", admittedly not very fast, but quick slot wide receiver. Of course, Rob Gronkowski was a great tight end, but again, tight end, not wide receiver. They were not explosive, but by death by 1,000 cuts. They were efficient. They were methodical. They scored 1,000,000 points. Penn State is following that same model. The best way you can compete at a very high level is to have 1,000,000 ways to beat people. This is why you have teams like Georgia, because Georgia has the firepower on offense. They can put up a lot of points. They can turn around and hand the football off and beat you. They can punt and let their defense do amazing things. That's why Georgia was so good. Alabama was so good for a long time for a lot of the same ways. This is the one problem with Ohio State. They struggle turning it off if their big plays aren't there. Michigan is the opposite. If they can't run the football at all, they really struggle. Penn State has kind of a great situation right here where they're good enough at everything. They have a bunch of different ways they can beat you. And I think that's what can really translate and push them over the top, especially since a lot of people haven't played against this quarterback. So I think we're getting to the point now where Penn State's actually set up a lot better than people think. We talked about this a few weeks ago, how good this Nittany Lions team is and the respect they're not getting. I think in terms of their efficiency of their offense, their balance of it, I think this is not going to be a weakness for them. I think it's going to be a strength for the rest of the year.
And you talk about efficiency, Nick, and I think that goes hand in hand with the other two things that come to my mind are sustainability and reliability. And you talk about chunks, 1,000 cuts, rather than the one big play to get you downfield. I would love my team to consistently get, like you said, 7, 8, 9, 6, 5 yards, rather than having to rely on a big 50-yard chunk play to get you down the field. That makes you feel like you're a more complete team. You're not just, like you said, throwing up shots trying to get the big play. So if this team can and will continue to be balanced, I think they're going to be much more reliable, and it's a much more sustainable game plan going forward. And you can use it against anybody. And I do think that'll also help the big plays come, as you said. I think eventually they're going to get favorable matchups, and they're just going to come naturally as the way they will. But to this point, to Franklin's credit, I think this balanced approach is absolutely perfect and could be the key for Penn State getting through the rest of this schedule.
And just one more thing to finish on here. You talk about the opposite, which is Ohio State, like we brought up. There's been a lot of consternation on the Buckeyes fans because Marvin Harrison Jr. has been a little beat up sometimes. Egbuka has been fighting through some injuries. And Ohio State fans are freaking out because they understand that's the only way they can win is big plays through the wide receiver core. If Penn State has 1 or 2 injuries, I mean, it'll hurt, but they'll be fine. There's other ways they can win. There's other ways they can score. Like you said, it'll help them navigate through the rest of the schedule. I tell you what, we're going to see some great battles between this Penn State football team and Michigan and Ohio State down the stretch. And I would not be surprised at all if Penn State goes to the Big Ten championship game. They are that good and that balanced as a football team.